the first 5 questions of the ACT practice test that's on the ACT website, act.org. And this is test number 1267C. So you can read along in that book or just read the screenshot here of the first page. Take a moment and try to answer questions 1 through 5. You can pause, and when you're ready to come back, we'll go over the answers. Okay, welcome back. Let's look at question number 1. We'll start by reading the essay in order. The nature trail is 6 feet wide and 7 miles long. It slithers through the forest like a snake, curving and bending along the banks of the river. Number 1, if we look at number 1, the answer, choice A, will that work? Well, let's look at A. If you take a peek at it, you can see that there's a comma between the snake doing 2 activities, curving and bending. And they'll test you on this concept quite a bit on the ACT, and you never want to put a comma between the word and if it's only separating 2 things. So essentially, if you ever have a situation, and you will, where they describe this and that, no comma is needed. They won't use the words this and that, but the 2 activities you'll need to define. And keep in mind that this is a simpler form right here that they've given you with choice A, because you just have the snake doing 2 things, curving and bending. If it were doing 3 things, we'd use commas, but not with just 2. Let's check choice B. It slithers through the forest like a snake, curving and bending along the banks of the river. Oh, actually that was choice C. And like a snake curving and bending along the banks of a river. Choice B, let's go back to that one. I like that quite a bit because it's like a snake, comma, and then we're going to describe what the snake was doing, curving and bending along the river banks. So let's keep B alive. That looks really good. C, we don't need a comma after bending there. It slithers through the forest like a snake curving and bending along the banks of the river. The curving and bending along the banks of the river is all one phrase, so that breaks up the second part of the phrase. And essentially with choice D, we've got that extra comma again between the 2 activities, so it's not going to be choice D. Choice B is your best choice. Question number 2. Okay. The county cleared this path and paved it with packed gravel. Which of the following alternatives would not be acceptable? So if you take a moment and read those, the best choice here is J. J would not be acceptable. Everything else flows in the sentence, but J is grammatically incorrect. If we try to read with choice J, we're going to get the county cleared this path, paved it with packed gravel. We do need some sort of conjunction there between path and paved. So for number 2, you should have J. 3. Now this is really unique to the ACT, so if you got this wrong, you didn't necessarily make a grammatical error. It's just you need to know that what they're looking for on the ACT is clarity. So if the county paved the path, or cleared the path and paved it with packed gravel so they would have a peaceful place to hike and bike, it makes it sound like they're preparing the path for themselves. That word they is a little ambiguous. They would like you to spell out who they is referring to. So who do you think they're clearing it for? Again, we said probably not themselves, but it's so people would have a peaceful place to hike and bike. So choice number 3 is going to be D, and your word of advice there is avoid ambiguous pronouns. If there's not a referent earlier in the sentence, spell it out. And if there is a referent early in the sentence and that's clearly not what they're going back to, make sure you clarify what their intention was. So I'm just going to put avoid ambiguous pronouns. And then choice number 5. If the writer were to delete the preceding sentence, the essay would primarily lose. Now let's read the sentence in question. If it says preceding, that means coming before the block 5. The author says, I ride this trail nearly every day. Actually, hold on, we skipped 4. Not on a bike, but on Luigi. And notice Luigi's in quotation marks. So, okay. I ride this trail nearly every day. Not on a bike, but on Luigi. I like choice F. I don't find anything wrong. The dash just simply means that they're going to explain further what they said in the preceding part of the sentence. And then you have a comma in conjunction. That's great. Choice G and J, I'm going to immediately eliminate because the semicolon is only ever, it has one function. And the semicolon equals a hard stop. It's the same thing as a period. If you pick a semicolon, you're telling me that what comes before the semicolon is a complete sentence, and what comes after the semicolon is a complete sentence. And if you take a moment to read G and J, you'll see neither are complete sentences. So that would leave choice F and H from which we could choose. And H is a run-on sentence. We don't break up any of the dependent and independent clauses. So by process of elimination, you could come to F even if you didn't know the functioning of the dash at that point. Now, finishing up with question 5. The author says, that's the nickname I gave my motorized vehicle, or wheelchair. So that's what Luigi is. It tells us, because remember, when I was reading that, I was like, okay, that's strange. But now I know that that's why it's in quotation marks. So, does this give us a reason why the narrator is in the forest? No. Is it a detail important for understanding the essay? Maybe. Maybe we need to know this person is in a wheelchair. C, a contrast to the lighthearted tone of the essay. No. And nothing at all, the information is irrelevant to the essay. If you're uncertain, you could see that only B and D would be your choices. You might want to read ahead a little bit and see if it's important to know that the author's in a wheelchair. I didn't read ahead, and I felt really comfortable choosing B, but if you need to read ahead, that's fine. There will be no ambiguity with these types of questions. It'll be clear that you need to know they're in a wheelchair if you read ahead a little bit. So those are your answers to the first 5. Check back in, and we'll do the next page.